The lights in the great meeting hall flickered as hundreds of alien beings took their seats. The Galactic Council was meeting again, and everyone knew this would not be a normal day. Ambassador Taman sat in the human section, his dark suit, making him stand out among the colorful robes and strange clothing of the other species. He had been Earth's voice in this place for 10 years now. His hair was getting gray, and his face showed the weight of many difficult talks. But his eyes was still sharp, watching every movement in the room. He knew something was coming. The aliens had been whispering among themselves for weeks. At the front of the hall, Supreme Chancellor Vorthak stood up. He was tall, even for his kind, with 4 yellow eyes that seemed to look at everything at once. His people, the Hegemony Coalition, controlled dozens of star systems. They were rich and powerful, but they had always stayed away from human space. "My fellow beings," Vorthak said, his voice carrying across the silent hall. "Today we must talk about a problem that grows bigger each day. The humans spread their ships across the galaxy like they own it all." Taman did not move, but inside, he felt cold. This was what he had been expecting. For months, his spies had been sending reports about secret meetings. The Hegemony was planning something, Vorthak continued talking. "They claim to protect trade routes, but their ships are everywhere. They make the rules and expect us all to follow." "This cannot go on," other alien leaders nodded. The Crystal Empire's representative clicked his crystal fingers together in agreement. The Void Hunter's chief made a low, growling sound that meant the same thing, but Taman noticed something else. The older aliens, the ones who remembered the Void Wars from 50 years ago, looked worried. They knew what happened when people fought Earth's fleet. Most of the younger aliens had only heard stories. They thought the stories were just talk. When the meeting ended, Taman walked slowly back to his ship. His assistant, a young woman named Hyjin, was waiting for him. "Sir, what do you think they will do?" she asked. "Something stupid," Taman said quietly. "Send a message to Admiral So-Young on Earth. Tell her to watch the border systems." Meanwhile, in his private rooms, Vorthak was meeting with his closest advisors. The room was dark, lit only by blue crystals that cast strange shadows on the walls. "The human fleet is not what it used to be," said General Krex, his war leader. "Our spies say they have moved most of their big ships to the frontier worlds. Earth itself has only a few defenders." Vorthak's 4 eyes gleamed, and their famous Captain Donghayan, the one they say never loses a battle? "He commands only 1 ship now, the Soul's Pride, a big ship, yes, but still just 1 ship. We have 200 ships ready to fight." "What about their other captains?" asked Admiral Zenth, a careful leader who did not like taking big risks. "Old or inexperienced," Krex replied. "Admiral So-Young is smart, but she is spread too thin. Captain Yunji is young and untested. Captain Minho has not fought a real battle in 20 years. Vorthak stood up and walked to the big window that showed the stars. Somewhere out there, human ships moved through space, carrying cargo and keeping peace. For too long, everyone had been afraid of them, but fear could be broken. "There is an old saying," Vorthak said slowly, "never meddle with Earth's fleet." But maybe it is time to test if this saying is still true. 3 days later, a distress signal reached Captain Donghayan's patrol group. His ship, the Soul's Pride, was a massive dreadnought that had fought in dozens of battles. It was old, but still powerful, with weapons that could destroy a small moon. The signal came from the Kepler system, a quiet place where human settlers had built mining colonies. The message was simple. Pirates were attacking, and people were dying. Donghayan was in his 50s, with gray hair and scars on his hands from his early days as a fighter pilot. He had been commanding ships for 25 years, and he had never lost a battle, but he was also careful. Something about this distress call felt wrong. "Lieutenant Hyun-woo," he called to his sensor officer. "Scan the Kepler system again." "I want to know everything." Hyun-woo was young but very good at his job. His fingers moved quickly over his controls. "Sir, I see the mining stations, but no pirates. And no human ships either." "Could be a trap," said Commander Jiwoo, the ship's engineer. She was a woman in her 40s who knew every wire and bolt on the Soul's Pride. But if there really are people in danger, Donghayan nodded. This was the problem with being human. They could not ignore people who needed help, even if it might be dangerous. It was who they were. Send a message to the Bizon Thunder and Ancient Guardian. Tell them to follow us to Kepler. But stay ready for anything. The 3 human ships jumped into hyperspace. They did not know that Vorthek's spies had been watching them for weeks. They did not know that the distress signal was fake. And they did not know that 200 enemy warships were waiting for them back on Earth. Admiral So Young was in her office when the message from Taemin arrived. She was a small woman with short black hair and eyes that missed nothing. She had been running Earth's fleet for 15 years, and she knew every ship and every captain. The message was short but clear. Trouble coming. Watch the borders. So Young looked out her window at Earth's blue sky. Somewhere up there, her captains were doing their jobs, keeping the peace and protecting innocent people. They trusted her to keep them safe. She pressed a button on her desk. Commander Wu Jin, come to my office. Wu Jin arrived quickly. He was her best strategic planner, a man who could see patterns that others missed. The hegemony is making moves, So Young said. I want all our reserve fleets ready to go, quietly. How many ships, Admiral? So Young smiled, but it was not a happy smile. All of them. Light years away, Captain Donghayan's 3 ships dropped out of hyperspace near Kepler Prime for a few seconds. Everything seemed normal. The mining stations were there, sending out their regular signals. The asteroid belt looked the same as always. Then Lieutenant Hyunwoo's screens lit up like a fireworks show. Captain, he shouted. Enemy ships. Lots of them. They're everywhere. The trap had been sprung. Lieutenant Hyunwoo's hands moved fast over his controls as enemy ships appeared on his screens like angry red dots. There were so many that the computer had trouble counting them all. 200 ships, sir, he called out. Maybe more. They were hiding behind the asteroids. Captain Donghayan stood calm in the center of his bridge. Around him, his crew worked at their stations with quick, practiced movements. They had trained for this moment their whole careers, but none of them had ever faced odds this bad. Engineering, give me everything the ship has, Donghayan said quietly. Weapons, charge all batteries. Communications, send our tactical data to Earth Command right now. Commander Ji-woo's voice came from the engine room. Captain, I can give you 110% power, but only for about an hour. That might be all we need, Donghayan replied. The first enemy missiles came flying toward them like angry metal birds. The Soul's Pride's defense guns opened fire, creating a wall of light between the human ships and death. Most of the missiles exploded before they could hit, but some got through. The ship shook as explosions bloomed against its armor. In the weapons room, Lieutenant Inha watched her screens and waited for the right moment. Target their command ships first, Donghayan ordered. Make them pay for every meter. Inha smiled grimly. She had been waiting for a real fight her whole career. Her fingers danced over the weapons controls, and the Soul's Pride's main guns spoke with thunder that could be heard across space. The first enemy ship to die was a hegemony cruiser that got too close. Inha's shot hit it right in the engine room, and it broke apart in a ball of fire. The second shot took out a command ship, and suddenly the enemy attack became less organized, but there were still too many of them on the hegemony flagship. Chancellor Vorthek watched the battle with growing anger. His war leader, General Krex, stood beside him with sweat running down his face. Why are they still fighting? Vorthek demanded. It should be over by now. Sir, they are better than we expected, Krex said carefully. They move like they can see the future. Every time we attack one place, they are already ready for us. On the screen, they watched the human destroyer, Bizon Thunder, spin around like a dancer and fire at 3 enemy ships at once. All 3 ships exploded. They are just humans, Vorthek shouted. We have 200 ships. Sir, we have lost 27 ships already. Vorthek's 4 eyes went wide. 27 ships? In less than an Hour? Against 3 human ships that should have been destroyed in the first 5 minutes? Back on the Soul's Pride, things were getting desperate. The ship had taken many hits, and fires were burning in several sections. But Dong Haiyan's crew kept fighting with the cold efficiency that made human spacers famous. "Captain," called Lieutenant Haiyan Wu, "the Ancient Guardian has lost engines. They are drifting." Dong Haiyan looked at his tactical display. The Guardian was helpless, and enemy ships were moving in to finish it off. He had to make a choice that would echo through history. "All ships form up on me. We are going to get our people out of there." "Sir," said Jiwoo from engineering, "if we go in there, we might not come back out." "Then we better make it count," Dong Haiyan replied, the Soul's Pride and Bison Thunder. Charged straight into the enemy formation. It was suicide, and everyone knew it. But it was also the most human thing they could do far away on Earth. Admiral So Young was in her command center when the message from Dong Haiyan arrived. The room was full of screens and busy officers, but everything went quiet when they heard a captain's voice. "This is Captain Dong Haiyan of Earth Fleet. We are under unprovoked attack by hegemony forces in the Kepler system. 200 enemy ships against 3 of ours. We are sending all our tactical data to Earth Command. Tell our families we held the line." So Young stood very still for a long moment. Around her, officers waited for orders. Finally, she spoke in a voice that was quiet but carried to every corner of the room. "How long to get our ships to Kepler?" 6 hours for the fast attack squadrons," replied Commander Wu Jin. 12 hours for the battle groups." "Too long," So Young said. Then she turned to her communications officer. "Send a message to all Earth Fleet commanders. Code Black, full mobilization. Every ship, every crew, every weapon we have." "Admiral," said Captain Young Soo, who commanded the carrier forces, "that is our entire fleet. If we are wrong about this ... So Young looked at him with eyes like ice. "Captain, they attacked our ships during a rescue mission. They used our own humanity against us. There is no wrong about this." She walked to the big display that showed the galaxy. Little lights marked where Earth's ships were stationed. Some were far away, protecting colonies. Others were close to home, guarding important trade routes. All of them were about to get new orders. "Send the message on all frequencies," So Young continued. "Every species, every government, every ship in space needs to hear this. The Hegemony Coalition has violated the most basic laws of civilization. They attacked rescue ships. This will not stand." The message went out across the galaxy in minutes. On hundreds of worlds, beings stopped what they were doing and listened. The humans, always so careful with their words, were speaking in a voice many had never heard before. On the trading station Deep Harbor, alien merchants looked at each other with worry. On the diplomatic world New Geneva, ambassadors started making emergency calls to their home governments. Everyone who knew anything about humans understood what was coming, but in the Kepler system, the fighting continued. Captain Dong Haiyan had managed to save most of the crew from the Ancient Guardian, but his own ship was dying. Fires burned in the engine room, and half his weapons were gone. "Sir," reported Lieutenant Haiyan Wu, "enemy reinforcements coming in." "Another 50 ships?" Dong Haiyan nodded calmly. "Keep fighting. Make every shot count." He opened a channel to his remaining crew. "People of Earth Fleet, today we show the galaxy what humans are made of. We may not win this battle, but we will. Make sure they remember it." In the engine room, Jiwoo pushed the ship's systems beyond their limits. Sparks flew from damaged panels, but the engines kept running. In the weapons section, Inha kept firing even though she knew they were almost out of ammunition on the bridge. Fanwu never stopped scanning space, looking for any advantage, any chance to hurt the enemy one more time. They were 3 ships against hundreds with no hope of rescue in time. But they were human, and they would never give up. Chancellor Vorthak watched his casualty reports climb and felt something he had never experienced before: fear. Not of death in battle, but of what he had started. The human ships should have been destroyed an hour ago, but they kept fighting with a skill and determination that seemed impossible. Sir, General Krek said quietly, maybe we should call for a ceasefire. Never, Vorthek snapped. We have come too far to stop now. But even as he spoke, he wondered if he had made the biggest mistake in galactic history. The old saying echoed in his mind, never meddle with Earth's fleet, maybe there was a reason for that saying after all. Admiral So Young stood in the command center watching the galaxy map light up with moving dots. Each dot was an Earth fleet ship getting ready to jump into hyperspace. She had given the order 6 hours ago, and already the response was bigger than anything seen since the Void Wars. Admiral, Commander Wujin reported, Captain Yunji's fast attack squadron is ready to jump. 4 heavy cruisers, fully armed. So Young nodded. Captain Yunji was young, only 32, but she was fast and smart. Her ships could reach Kepler in 20 minutes if they pushed their engines hard. Tell her to go, maximum speed. But remind her that Captain Donghayan's people might still be alive in there. The first rescue force jumped into hyperspace, racing toward a battle that might already be over. But So Young was not sending just one group. All across human space, more ships were moving. Captain Minho received his orders while his battle group was patrolling the Centauri system. He was older than most captains, with gray hair and careful eyes. His ships were not fast, but they were tough and carried big guns. All ships, prepare for a combat jump, he ordered. We are going to Kepler, and we are going to end this. From the frontier worlds came Commodore Youngsu's carrier force. His ships were full of fighter planes and attack craft. Each carrier held hundreds of small, fast ships that could swarm around big enemy vessels like angry bees, but the real surprise was still hidden. Deep in space, where no one expected them, Earth's reserve fleets had been waiting quietly for years. These were the ships that most aliens thought were just stories. Now they were getting orders to move. Captain Unji felt her ship shake as they dropped out of hyperspace near Kepler. Around her, space was full of debris and fire. The battle had been going on for hours, and it showed. Sensors, find our people, she ordered quickly. Captain, I have the Soul's Pride. She is badly damaged, but still fighting. The Bisen Thunder is with her, but the Ancient Guardian is gone. Unji felt anger fill her chest like cold fire. The Guardian had been a good ship with a good crew. Now it was just pieces floating in space. Weapons, target the enemy ships closest to our survivors. Full power, no mercy. Her 4 cruisers hit the hegemony fleet like a hammer hitting glass. The aliens had been focused on finishing off Donghayan's ships, and they were not ready for fresh enemies coming from behind. The first enemy ship to die was a destroyer that never saw Yunji's missiles coming. The second was a cruiser that tried to turn and fight but moved too slowly. In 10 minutes, Yunji's squadron had destroyed 12 enemy ships and scattered the rest. On the Soul's Pride, Captain Donghayan felt hope for the first time in hours. His ship was barely holding together, but rescue had arrived. Captain Yunji, this is Captain Donghayan. Good to see you. Sir, we are getting you out of here. Can your ship move? Barely, but we will follow you anywhere. The rescue became a fighting retreat as more Earth ships arrived. Captain Minho's battle group dropped out of hyperspace just as the hegemony tried to surround Yunji's cruisers. His heavy ships opened fire with guns that could punch holes through planets. The aliens found themselves caught between 2 forces and took terrible losses. But they were still trying to win, and more of their allies were coming. On his flagship, Chancellor Vorthak watched his perfect trap turn into a disaster. He had lost over 60 ships, and the humans just kept coming. Sir, General Krek said nervously, our allies are asking when they should attack. Vorthak had forgotten about his allies. The Crystal Empire, the Razor Syndicate, the Void Hunters, they were all supposed to help destroy the human fleet. Now he needed them more than ever. Tell them to come now. All of them. If we are going to fight Earth's fleet, we need everything we have. The call went out across the galaxy. Ancient treaties were activated and old alliances were tested. Within hours, 6 different alien powers were sending their fleets toward Kepler. Back on Earth, Ambassador Taemin stood before the Galactic Council once again. But this time, the hall was different. Many seats were empty as governments recalled their representatives for emergency meetings. Honored beings, Taman said in a voice that carried across the silent hall. 6 hours ago, the Hegemony Coalition attacked Earth rescue ships without warning or cause. They used a fake distress call to lure our people into a trap. He pressed a button, and holographic images filled the air above the council floor. They showed the battle from the beginning, with audio from the Hegemony ships proving they had planned the attack. This is not a border dispute or a trade disagreement, Taman continued. This is an unprovoked assault on ships engaged in humanitarian rescue operations. Under galactic law, this is the highest form of war crime. Some of the alien representatives looked uncomfortable. They had known something was being planned, but they had not known the details. Attacking rescue ships was something that civilized beings did not do. Earth's response will be proportional, Taman said quietly. We will defend our people and our principles. Those who stand with the hegemony in this matter will be considered enemies of humanity. The threat was clear. Earth was not just going to defend itself, it was going to make an example of anyone who supported the attack. Meanwhile, at Kepler, the battle was growing bigger by the hour. Commodore Youngsu's carriers had arrived, and space was now full of human fighter craft. The small ships moved like schools of fish, attacking enemy vessels and then disappearing before they could be caught. But the real shock came when Admiral So-Young herself arrived with the main battle fleet. Her flagship, the New Sol, was a ship that most people thought was just a legend. It was huge, armed with weapons that could destroy entire fleets, and protected by shields that could stop anything. The New Sol dropped out of hyperspace like a mountain falling from the sky. Around it came dozens of other ships, battleships, carriers, cruisers, destroyers, all of them crewed by humans, who had trained their whole lives for this moment. Chancellor Vorthak stared at the tactical display in his command room and felt his 4 eyes go wide with fear. The human fleet was bigger than his intelligence reports had said. Much bigger. How many ships do they have? He whispered. Sir, we count over 200 human vessels and more are still arriving. 200 ships. The same number that Vorthak had brought to destroy 3 human vessels. But these were not mining ships or patrol craft. These were warships, built for battle and crewed by the most dangerous spacers in the galaxy. Sir, General Krex said quietly, perhaps we should consider a ceasefire. No, Vorthak shouted. Our allies are coming. The Crystal Empire has 300 ships. The Razor Syndicate has 200. We can still win this. But even as he spoke, Vorthak could hear the fear in his own voice. He had wanted to test whether Earth's fleet was still as dangerous as the old stories claimed. Now he was about to find out. And he was starting to think that the old stories might not have been stories at all on the bridge of the New Sol. Admiral So-Young looked at the enemy fleet with cold, calculating eyes. She had spent years planning for this moment, and now it was time to show the galaxy why humans were respected and feared in equal measure. All ships, this is Admiral So-Young, today. We remind the galaxy why there is one rule that everyone follows. Never meddle with Earth's fleet. Let's show them why. The Battle of Kepler Prime began at exactly 1432 Galactic Standard Time, when Admiral So-Young gave the order that would be remembered for centuries. All ships execute Thunderstrike formation, show them what humans can do. The New Sol moved forward like a mountain of metal and fire. Around it, the Earth fleet spread out in a pattern that looked simple, but was actually the result of hundreds of years of tactical development. Every ship knew exactly where to go and what to do. Chancellor Vorthak watched from his flagship as the human fleet approached. His own ships outnumbered the humans, especially with his allies coming to help, but something felt wrong. The humans were moving too confidently, like they already knew they had one. General Krex, order all ships to attack formation, Vorthak commanded. We will crush them with pure numbers. The hegemony fleet moved forward in a massive wall of ships. It was an impressive sight, hundreds of vessels advancing together like a metal storm. But Admiral So-Young had seen such tactics before, and she knew how to break them. Captain Seokjin, take your destroyers and hit their left flank. Make them think that is our main attack. Captain Seokjin was a veteran fighter who had learned space combat from his father, who had fought in the Void Wars. His 6 destroyers peeled away from the main fleet and charged straight at the enemy's left side. The hegemony commanders saw the attack coming and moved ships to meet it. This was exactly what So Young wanted. While the enemy was focused on Seokjin's destroyers, she prepared her real attack. All ships, prepare for hyperspace jump. Target coordinates uploaded. Execute. In 3.2.1, half of the human fleet vanished into hyperspace, leaving the aliens confused and worried. Where had they gone? The answer came 30 seconds later when the missing ships appeared directly behind the hegemony fleet. Surprise, So Young said, quietly, and gave the order to fire. The battle became a 3-dimensional chess game played with ships and weapons. The aliens had expected a simple fight between 2 fleets, but the humans were fighting a battle that moved through hyperspace and normal space at the same time. Captain Haiwon commanded a squadron of missile destroyers that appeared above the enemy fleet like ghosts. Her ships fired thousands of guided missiles and then jumped back into hyperspace before the aliens could respond. Lieutenant Colonel Changmin led fighter squadrons that swarmed around the big enemy ships like angry insects. His pilots had trained for years to work together, and they moved like they were all controlled by one mind. But the real terror was Commander Yujin's stealth frigates. These ships had been hiding in the Kepler system for days, invisible to enemy sensors. Now they attacked from inside the alien formation, hitting supply ships and command vessels. The hegemony fleet, which had seemed so powerful just minutes before, began to fall apart. Ships collided with each other trying to avoid human attacks. Commanders gave contradictory orders. Some captains tried to retreat while others charged forward. On the New Seoul, Chief Technical Officer Sun Woo managed the ship's advanced targeting systems. The computer could track thousands of enemy ships at once and predict where they would be in the next few seconds. When the main guns fired, they almost never missed. Target the command ships first, So Young ordered. Cut off their head and the body will die. The New Seoul's guns spoke with thunder that could be heard across 3 star systems. Each shot was perfectly aimed, and each shot destroyed an enemy vessel. The aliens had never seen accuracy like this. Chancellor Vorthak felt his flagship shake as human weapons hit the shields. Around him, his command staff worked frantically to coordinate the battle, but nothing was going according to plan. Sir, we have lost contact with Admiral Zent's battle group, reported one officer. The Crystal Empire fleet is asking for orders, said another. Our supply ships are under attack, called a third. Vorthak realized that he was not just losing the battle, he was losing control of it. The humans were not just better fighters. They were better at everything. Their tactics, their technology, their coordination, it was all superior to anything the hegemony could manage. Where are our allies? He demanded. Sir, the Crystal Empire fleet is engaging human forces on the outer edge of the system. They have lost half their ships in the first hour. Half their ships in 1 hour? The Crystal Empire had 300 vessels, some of the most advanced in the galaxy. How could they lose so many so quickly? The answer was Captain Bill Young and her light cruiser squadron. Her ships were not the biggest or most powerful in the human fleet, but they were fast and smart. They had caught the Crystal Empire fleet while it was still forming up for battle. Hit them hard and move, Bill Young ordered her captains. Don't let them get organized. Her cruisers struck like lightning, destroying enemy ships and then disappearing before return fire could reach them. The Crystal Empire's careful formations broke apart as captains tried to chase the elusive human ships. Meanwhile, the Void Hunters were learning why their reputation for aggression meant nothing against human tactical superiority. They had charged straight at Admiral So Young's main fleet, expecting to overwhelm the humans with sheer violent fury. Instead, they flew into a trap that Commander Kyung-ho had been preparing for hours. Hidden mines exploded around the alien ships, while human vessels appeared from hyperspace at exactly the right moment to catch the confused survivors. The Razor Syndicate tried a different approach, sending their ships in small groups to attack human supply lines. But they discovered that Earth's fleet had no supply lines to attack. Every human ship carried everything it needed for extended combat. As the battle reached its peak, something happened that no one expected. The flagship of the Razor Syndicate, a massive dreadnought called Death's Edge, tried to ram the New Sol in a suicide attack. Admiral So Young watched the enemy ship approaching on her screens. It was huge and heavily armed, and its captain was willing to die to destroy her flagship. In most space battles, such an attack would be unstoppable, but the New Sol was not like most ships. Its shields were powered by technology that most alien races thought was impossible. Its armor was made from materials that Earth scientists had been developing for decades. When Death's Edge hit the New Sol, the explosion lit up half the star system. The blast could be seen from planets light years away. For a moment even, the humans thought their flagship might be destroyed. Then the light faded, and the New Sol emerged from the fire, damaged but still fighting. The Razor Syndicate's most powerful ship was gone, reduced to scattered metal and memories. The psychological effect on the alien fleets was devastating. If their biggest ship could not even scratch the human flagship, what hope did they have? One by one, the alien commanders began to retreat. First the Crystal Empire, then the Void Hunters, then the smaller powers that had joined the fight expecting easy victory. Chancellor Vorthak found himself alone with what remained of his original fleet, surrounded by human ships and facing certain defeat. His grand plan to humiliate humanity had become his own destruction. "Sir," General Krex said quietly, "we should surrender." Vorthak looked around his command center at the faces of his officers. They were all thinking the same thing, but none of them wanted to say it out loud. The Hegemony Coalition, one of the most powerful forces in the galaxy, had been crushed by the humans in less than 6 hours. "Send the surrender signal," Vorthak said finally, but Admiral So Young was not finished yet. She had one more lesson to teach the galaxy. Admiral So Young stood on the bridge of the New Sol and looked at the tactical display showing the aftermath of the battle. Scattered across the Kepler system were the remains of what had once been 6 different alien fleets. Hundreds of ships destroyed, thousands more damaged, and tens of thousands of alien soldiers dead or captured. "Admiral," Commander Wujin reported, "the Hegemony flagship is requesting permission to surrender." So Young nodded slowly. The battle was over, but the real work was just beginning. How Earth handled victory would matter more than how they had won it, except their surrender. "But I want all their officers brought to our ships for questioning, and send medical teams to help their wounded." This surprised some of her officers. They had expected her to be angry after the unprovoked attack. But So Young knew that how humans treated defeated enemies would be watched by the entire galaxy. Captain Dong Haiyan's ship, the Sol's Pride, limped toward the New Sol under its own power. The old dreadnought was badly damaged, with holes in its armor and fires still burning in some sections. But it was still flying, and its crew was still alive. "Captain Dong Haiyan," So Young said over the communication system, "report to my flagship for debriefing. And bring your senior officers." "Yes, Admiral." "And Admiral ... Donk. You held the line, Captain. That is what we do." While the human fleet secured the battle area, Captain Yunji led a special investigation team through the captured enemy ships. What they found in the Hegemony computers would shock the galaxy. "Admiral," Yunji reported from Chancellor Vorthak's flagship, "you need to see this. They did not just attack our patrol ships. This was part of a much bigger plan." The evidence was all there in the enemy files. Maps showing how they planned to divide human space between the different alien powers. Lists of human colonies they intended to attack. Even plans for what to do with captured human civilians. "They were going to enslave our people," Yunji said, her voice tight with controlled anger. "Men, women, children, they had buyers already lined up." So Young felt cold fury rise in her chest, but she kept her voice calm. "Copy everything. Send it to Ambassador Taemin on the diplomatic channel. The galaxy needs to know what kind of beings they were supporting. Meanwhile, on Earth, the news of the victory was spreading quickly. But So Young was not celebrating yet. She knew that winning the battle was only the first step. Now came the harder task of winning the peace. Commander Wujin, I want you to contact all the neutral governments. Tell them we are willing to discuss terms for ending this conflict. But make it clear, we will not be attacked again. The message went out on all frequencies, translated into dozens of alien languages. Earth was offering peace, but on their terms, the economic consequences of the battle began immediately. Captain Mi Young, commanding a squadron of commerce raiders, had been operating throughout alien space during the fighting. Her ships had not attacked civilian vessels, but they had captured every military supply ship they could find. Admiral Mi Young reported, "We have taken control of the main supply route between Hegemony Space and their allies. Without these supplies, their war machine will stop working in a few weeks." This was the part of human strategy that most aliens did not understand. Earth's military did not just fight battles, they fought entire wars, thinking months and years. Ahead, the hegemony had planned a quick strike to destroy a few human ships. The humans had responded by crippling their entire civilization. The psychological warfare was just as effective. Commander Kyung-ho's intelligence division released detailed analyses of the battle, showing exactly how outmatched the alien forces had been. The reports were written in simple language that anyone could understand, and they were terrifying. At no point during the 6-hour engagement did human forces face any serious threat, read one report. Enemy tactics were predictable, their technology was outdated, and their coordination was poor. Human casualties were minimal. These reports spread through the galaxy like wildfire. In alien military academies, students studied the Battle of Kepler Prime and wondered how their own fleets would have performed. The answer was usually uncomfortable, but the most shocking revelation came when Ambassador Temin presented the captured evidence to the Galactic Council. The Great Hall was packed with representatives from hundreds of worlds, all wanting to see what the humans had discovered. "Honored beings," Temin said, his voice carrying clearly through the silent chamber, "I present to you the true purpose of the hegemony's attack on our rescue ships." The holographic displays showed the alien plans in detail. Maps of human space, divided up like a meal, lists of human colonies to be attacked, plans for slave markets where captured humans would be sold. This was not a border dispute, Temin continued. This was not even a war in the traditional sense. This was planned genocide, followed by the enslavement of survivors. The reaction was immediate and explosive. Several alien representatives stood up and began shouting denials. Others demanded investigations of their own government's involvement. The carefully ordered chamber descended into chaos. Through it all, Temin stood calmly at the speaker's podium, waiting for quiet to return. When it finally did, his next words were delivered in a voice that seemed to come from the depths of space itself. Earth's response to this threat has been measured and proportional. We destroyed the fleets that attacked us. We captured the leaders who planned genocide. We offered mercy to those who surrendered. But let no being in this chamber doubt our resolve. If anyone tries this again, our response will be far less merciful. The silence that followed was complete. Even the hegemony's few remaining allies sat without speaking, realizing the magnitude of what their governments had supported. Within days, the political fallout began. Chancellor Vorthok's government collapsed as his own people learned what he had planned in their name. Several other alien leaders were forced to resign when their populations discovered their involvement in the plot. But Earth was not content with just political victories. Trade Commissioner Jung-sik arrived at Kepler Prime with a fleet of cargo ships loaded with medical supplies and reconstruction equipment. "We will help rebuild what was damaged in the fighting," Jung-sik announced. Human policy has always been to offer generous terms to defeated enemies who showed genuine remorse. This confused many aliens. Why would the humans help rebuild ships and stations they had just destroyed? The answer was simple but profound. Humans understood that lasting peace required former enemies to become partners. The integration program began immediately. Former hegemony officers who had shown honor during the battle were offered positions in joint patrol units. Alien crews who had surrendered without resistance were allowed to keep their ships, if they agreed to work with human commanders. Captain Dong Haiyan, recovered from his injuries, was given command of the new Frontier Defense Force. His staff included several alien officers who had fought against him at Kepler, their respect earned through his conduct during and after the battle. "Sir," asked his new tactical officer, a former hegemony commander named Zeln, "why do humans fight so differently from everyone else?" Dong Haiyan thought for a moment before answering. "Most species fight to win battles. Humans fight to win the peace that comes after. We learned long ago that defeating an enemy is not enough. You have to give them a reason to stay defeated." As the weeks passed, the full scope of Earth's victory became clear. The human fleet had not just won a battle. They had reshaped the entire galactic balance of power. Trade routes that had been controlled by hostile aliens now welcomed human ships. Neutral governments that had been considering alliances against Earth now sought partnerships with humanity, but perhaps the most important change was in the alien military academies, where a new course was being taught to young officers. It was called the Kepler Doctrine, and its first lesson was simple: never meddle with Earth's fleet. They knew, they did it anyway. Learn from their mistake. 6 months after the Battle of Kepler Prime, the galaxy had found a new rhythm. Trade ships moved safely through space routes that had been dangerous for decades. Border disputes that had lasted for years were being settled through negotiation instead of warfare. And everywhere, the lesson of Kepler was remembered. Admiral So Young stood before the Galactic Defense Council in its new meeting hall on the neutral world of Haven Station. The old council chamber had been too damaged by political upheaval to continue operating. This new one was smaller, quieter, and filled with faces that showed respect rather than suspicion. "Fellow defenders of galactic peace," So Young began, her voice carrying easily through the chamber. 6 months ago, we faced a test of our civilization's most basic principles. The test was not just about military strength, but about our commitment to protecting the innocent and maintaining order. She looked around the room at the assembled representatives. Many were from species that had fought against humanity at Kepler. Now they sat as partners in the new galactic order. Earth's fleet exists for one purpose: to ensure that peaceful beings can live their lives without fear of violence or oppression. We do not seek to control other worlds or impose our values on unwilling populations, but we will not allow others to threaten the peace that benefits all civilized beings. Ambassador Taemin, now serving as chairman of the Defense Council, nodded approvingly. The new organization was smaller than the old Galactic Council, but it was also more effective. Representatives who came here were serious about maintaining peace, not playing political games. In the audience, former Chancellor Vorthak listened carefully to So Young's words. He was no longer a political leader. His own people had removed him from power after learning about his plans for genocide and slavery. But he had been allowed to attend these meetings as an observer, part of his rehabilitation process. The humans, Vorthak had learned, were more interested in redemption than revenge. They wanted former enemies to understand their mistakes and become better beings, not just to suffer for past failures. "Admiral So Young," called out Representative Kethov, "the Crystal Empire, what is Earth's position on the new trade agreements?" "Earth supports free trade between all peaceful civilizations," So Young replied. "But we will continue to monitor shipping lanes and investigate any suspicious activities. The safety of civilian vessels is not negotiable." This was the new reality. Human ships patrolled the major trade routes, not as conquerors but as protectors. Piracy had almost disappeared, and even the most aggressive species had learned to respect civilian shipping. Captain Dong Haiyan commanded one of these patrol groups from his new flagship, the Kepler's Honor. The ship was a gift from the reformed hegemony government, their way of showing respect for his conduct during the battle. His crew was mixed: humans, former hegemony officers, Crystal Empire navigators, and even a few reformed void hunters. "Captain," reported his tactical officer, Lieutenant Zeln, formerly Commander Zeln of the Hegemony Fleet, we have a distress call from the Proxima system. Civilian cargo ship requesting assistance. Dong Hyan smiled slightly. Zeln had been one of the officers who surrendered honorably at Kepler, and he had proven to be an excellent addition to the crew. More importantly, he had become a living example of how former enemies could become trusted allies. Set course for Proxima. Maximum speed. The mixed crew worked together smoothly, their different backgrounds creating a stronger team than any single species could have managed alone. This was happening throughout the galaxy as humans demonstrated that cooperation was more powerful than domination. Back on Earth, Trade Commissioner Jung-sik was meeting with economic advisors from dozens of worlds. The reconstruction program. That had begun after Kepler was now a permanent partnership between Earth and former enemy civilizations. The latest reports show remarkable progress, Jung-sik announced to the assembled delegates. Former hegemony worlds have increased their production by 30% since joining the cooperative trade network. Crystal Empire manufacturing has reached pre-war levels ahead of schedule. This was the part of human strategy that most aliens found hardest to understand. Earth could have used its military victory to demand tribute or control resources. Instead, they had created a system where everyone benefited from peace and cooperation, but not everyone was happy with the new order. In the Outer Rim territories, some species still harbored resentment against human influence. They whispered about the old days when different civilizations could fight each other. Without interference, one such group was meeting in secret on the asteroid base called Rock Haven. Their leader was Admiral Sek of the Crimson Fleet, a pirate organization that had been driven out of business by human patrol ships. The humans have made the galaxy soft, Sek declared to his followers. In the old days, strength meant something. Now they talk about cooperation and mutual benefit. It makes me sick. His audience of pirates, raiders, and outcasts nodded agreement. They missed the chaos that had allowed them to prey on peaceful civilizations. But what can we do? Asked Captain Nex, a former Void hunter who had refused to join the rehabilitation program. Their fleet is too strong, Sek smiled with sharp teeth. We cannot fight their fleet directly. But there are other ways to cause trouble, hit their supply ships, attack their civilian settlements, make them spread their forces thin trying to protect everyone. It was the same kind of thinking that had led to the disaster at Kepler. But some beings never learned from history. Their plans might have succeeded against a different enemy. But they were facing humans, and humans had been dealing with pirates and terrorists for centuries. Commander Eugen's intelligence network had been monitoring groups like Sex since the end of the battle. Admiral, Eugen reported to So Young from her hidden base on Titan Station, the Crimson Fleet is planning attacks on civilian targets. Should we move to stop them? So Young considered the question carefully. The easy answer would be to send warships to destroy the pirate base. But that would create martyrs and possibly inspire more resistance. No, she said finally, let them make their move. But make sure our people are ready. When the Crimson Fleet attacked a human cargo convoy near the Vega system, they found themselves facing not helpless merchants but a carefully prepared trap. Captain Yunji's fast attack squadron had been waiting in the area, and her ships moved to intercept the pirates before they could reach their targets. The battle was brief and one-sided. The pirates had expected to find easy prey and instead encountered professional military vessels. Most of Admiral Sek's fleet was captured intact, and the few ships that escaped carried word of the defeat back to other criminal organizations, but the real message was in how the captured pirates were treated. Instead of execution or imprisonment, they were offered the same rehabilitation program that had been successful with former military officers. Some refused and remained in prison, but others chose to learn new ways of living. Captain Next was one of those who chose rehabilitation. 6 months later, he was serving as a security officer on a human trade station, using his knowledge of criminal tactics to protect the civilians he had once threatened. "Why do you do this?" he asked Captain Mi Young during one of their regular meetings. "You could have just killed us all. It would have been easier." Mi Young thought for a moment before answering. Humans learned something long ago. Dead enemies stay dead, but they also cannot become friends. Living former enemies can become allies if they are given the chance to change. This philosophy was spreading throughout the galaxy. Species that had been enemies for centuries were finding ways to work together. Trade replaced warfare, and cooperation became more valuable than conquest. The new galactic order was not perfect. There were still disputes and problems, still groups that preferred violence to negotiation. But they were becoming smaller and less influential as more civilizations discovered the benefits of peace. Admiral So Young stood in her office on Earth, looking out at the blue sky that had been her homeworld's protection for so many years. On her desk were reports from across the galaxy, trade agreements signed, disputes resolved peacefully, former enemies working together on joint projects. Commander Wu Jin entered with the daily briefing. Admiral, the Frontier Patrols report all quiet. No major incidents in the past week. Good, So Young replied. And the reconstruction projects? Ahead of schedule. The former hegemony worlds are requesting additional human technical advisors. So Young nodded with satisfaction. This was what victory really looked like. Not destroyed enemies, but transformed ones. Not conquered territories, but willing partners. Sir, Wu Jin continued, there is one more thing. Ambassador Taemin is requesting a meeting with you. About what? He says there are some new species beyond the Outer Rim that are asking about joining the Defense Council. They want to know if Earth would sponsor their membership. So Young smiled. The galaxy was still growing, still changing. New civilizations were discovering that cooperation with humanity offered more benefits than opposition. Tell the ambassador I will meet with him tomorrow and send a message to all fleet. Commanders, we may need to expand our patrol routes again. She looked back out at the sky.